Issue 3 of the Justice Society of America began with a scene set near the end of World War II, specifically 1944, where the unknown soldier handed over a top secret file to Sergeant Rock and Easy Company that contained details of their next target. The scientist, Daredevil, who at the time was in the process of building a time machine so the Nazis could win the war. However, before the sergeant and his crew could get their hands on Daredevil, he managed to activate his machine and transport himself to, surprise surprise, 1947, where he eventually had his initial confrontation with the JSA, and then the story whisks us to the present day, where we see the star of our show, the Huntress, meet the JSA so she can tell them about her plight. A plight, I hasten to add, that didn't progress any further, because from this point onwards all this issue really did was update us on the JSA's current roster. This includes Alan Scott, who for some reason has grown a beard, the female versions of Wildcat and Dr. Midnight, who've recently been resurrected due to the Lazarus Pit saga, as well as other members such as Jay, Kara, Jakim and Courtney. We also find out that the Huntress is slightly conflicted with her mission, because on the one hand she wants to save her team and her deceased mother and father, while on the other hand she's tempted to change time herself by informing the JSA about their respective futures. But to be completely honest with you, I don't think she's going to jeopardise her mission. Not yet, anyway, which kind of left us with a nicely illustrated story that did a great job at respecting past continuity, such as the references to previous adventures, for instance, as well as the inclusion of wartime heroes like Sergeant Rock. Having said that though, there were a couple of things about this issue that I wasn't too keen on, mainly the lack of story progression as well as the inclusion of the female versions of Wildcat and Dr. Midnight rather than their more popular male counterparts. In any event, so far so good, and I must admit that this issue did end with one amazing cliffhanger. Last month I tried to review a previous episode of 1 Minute War in just 1 minute, so this month I'm going to try to do the same thing once again. To begin, let me just say that the art was varied due to the 3 different artists assigned to illustrate this book, one good, one bad and one stylistically different, whereas the actual storyline was very simple to follow but unfortunately came across as rather formulaic by design. Structurally at least, because just like part 4 of 1 Minute War, this 6th part started with a fairly straightforward setup that explained what the characters had to do in order to defeat the faction. It then progressed with some character based scenes and a bit of action. Loved the Liberty Bell prologue by the way, as that was very patriotic, before finally, once again, the heroes failed to save the day. Well, they kind of failed, because unbeknownst to Barry and the rest of the Flash family, spoiler alert, Wally West didn't die at the end of episode 4 of 1 Minute War. Instead, he was somehow whisked away to... Huh? What's that? 1 minute has gone already? Oh bugger. And I was really hoping that I could finish the review properly this time. Either way, I'd say this penultimate episode was a moderately fine read, as the art was varied, the story was exciting to follow, and from the looks of it, this event should end on a really positive note. Many years ago, a bold adventurer named Rex Mason fell in love with a lovely rich lady named Sapphire Stagg. However, her father, Simon Stagg, didn't like Rex, not one little bit, so he arranged to have him murdered while on an expedition in Egypt. But unfortunately for Simon, Rex didn't die during this expedition. In fact, he became reborn in a brand new body, but only because he came into contact with a strange ancient orb which magically transformed him into an elemental being that was one part amazing and one part ugly. Well, not totally ugly, as Sapphire still loved him and managed to make Rex embrace his brand new life by bestowing him with a lot of care and attention, until years later when her father was murdered by unknown forces. But was it Rex? Did Rex kill Simon over his transformation? And if he did, why did he wait so long before he enacted his revenge? That's what Batman, Superman, Robin and even Jimmy Olsen tried to find out in this particular episode of The World's Finest, which in my opinion was a pretty decent read. Well, not only was it a very exciting story full of real Silver Age charm both on a visual and a narrative level, but in addition to this, it was dynamic, it was mysterious, and in many ways it reminded me of an old episode of Columbo. Although in this case our heroes didn't smoke cigars or drive dilapidated vehicles, as they spent most of their time chronicling Rex Mason's checkered origins and investigating Simon Stagg's apparent death. Yes, that's right, I said apparent death, because I don't think the evil sod's actually dead. If anything, he's probably faking it just to make Rex look bad. I still like this story though, as it was a really great adventure that was easy on the eyes and even easier to follow. So easy in fact, that the ending really took me by surprise. Now I know this is going to sound like a strange thing to say, but in many ways the first part of this adventure reminded me of going to an accident and emergency department prior to a major incident. Well, from the get-go, nothing much happened except for some of the characters conversing about their current state of play, including the Stormwinds, who informed Acre about their next plan of attack, as well as Daredevil, who argued with Leonard about him and a couple of recruits leaving the island, when suddenly, bang, the major incident occurred, which in this case involved a bomb being dropped on the Fist's HQ, the revelation that Foggy and Stick are dead and have been replaced by doppelgangers who suddenly fade away, and finally the Avengers showed up to take on Daredevil and his crew. So, from a story standpoint, its structure was a little lopsided, tonally at least, as it started out very slow and it ended rather frantically. Saying so while keeping in mind that the art style was less nuanced than previous episodes, which visually gave it a slightly different tone and pace. Now don't get me wrong, as I'm not trying to say that I didn't enjoy reading this episode, it's just that sometimes it did come across feeling a little bit bipolar, just like Matt in fact, who at the moment doesn't seem to know what to do for the best. Well, should he continue with his quest, even though he knows that certain parts of it are thoroughly flawed? And if he does go ahead with his plan, what about Foggy and Stick, as I can't see him leaving them both in hell to rot for all eternity. Either way, all in all, I'd say this episode of Daredevil was a pretty decent read, as the art was okay, the story was bipolar, and the ending was so bonkers I can't wait to see what happens next. Overall, I really enjoyed reading this episode of Batman because it managed to teach me three specific things. Firstly, I learnt that Bruce Wayne is a real badass, not only because he was willing to dig up his own multiversal counterpart and experiment on him, but he was also willing to take on a Venom-induced Harvey Dent. The second thing I learnt was that this world's Selina Kyle is fairly similar to our world's Selina Kyle, mainly due to her willingness to team up with Bruce after she had a brash disagreement with her boss, Red Mask. And last but not least, I discovered that Arkham Asylum has been replaced by a series of caves buried deep beneath Gotham, along with the fact that this world's Bruce Wayne comes from another universe. Surprising, I know, and begs the question, where did he come from and why didn't he try to make his way back home again? I was also rather surprised by the mastermind behind all of these shenanigans, namely Red Mask, as it looks like he wants to reshape Gotham in his own image and, surprise surprise, has speed powers of his own. But how? How did he get these powers and why does he want to reshape Gotham in his own image? Could it be that he's this world's version of the Flash gone bad, or could he be another tainted version of someone we already know, like the Joker for instance, or even the Red Hood? Either way, I really enjoyed reading this book because the art was nicely atmospheric, the story was intriguing to follow, and the Tim Drake backup feature gave the main story another dimension. Although in this case, Tim's story was short but sweet and focused on him taking on the Toy Master so he can save all of the people he previously kidnapped.